put your hands together. Welcome to the gathering.
A few years ago, a gathering began, a fusion coalition. The New Testament has that word in Greek that we translate church, but that word in common English is really the gathering.
That's right.
And the gathering of people who wouldn't have any other good reason to be together, but something brought them together. That's that ecclesia, that gathering.
Because every time people say, well, why they keep coming? The statute says, send these.
That's right.
And see, after it says, give me your tithe, your poor, your whole masses yearning to be free. Then it says, the wretched refuse of your teeming shores, send these.
Send them.
Not only should folk be coming, we should be saying, send them.
Right.
Send Joshua to us. And it says, send the homeless and the tempest-tossed. Tempest-tossed means if Jocelyn was going through the storm of gang violence where she was, send her. Don't deny her. Send her. Don't send her away. Send her to us.
Join us on August 6th for the gathering. This month we're focused on immigration and sanctuary. We have millions of neighbors who are living in the shadows without documentation, without papers, for various reasons, and yet we have a crisis in this country now, a moral crisis, because those folks are being pushed out. They're being scared into hiding and into running away, and they're being rounded up by ICE and by deportation orders. Our detention centers are filling up. It's a moral crisis, and we're calling on the faith community and the moral movement to come together to learn about what's going on, to learn how faith communities can offer sanctuary, and to stand with our immigrant brothers and sisters.
This is our daughter. Touch her, touch us. This is our daughter. Touch her, touch us. This is our daughter. Touch her, touch us. This is our daughter. Touch her, touch us.
Well, Reverend Barber, I believe we have a gathering. We have a gathering, and that's where we're going to start.
Of course, you guys are in line for ice cream.
Yes, we are.
Priorities.
Yeah, I guess.
All right. Well, I don't know about each of you, but I have been waiting for this time all day. So if you are ready, I would like for each of us to stand up tonight as we get ready to go forward into our second gathering. Tonight, our topic is voting rights. And as we saw this week, as I said earlier, there's a lot of stuff going on. And we know that there are those evil forces in our nation trying to come together to make sure that those who are on the margins are oppressed. But I think we have a group here tonight that says, no way, no how, not going to happen, not in our country. Is that right? Am I in the right house tonight? Y'all not making me convinced. Am I in the right house tonight? That we will not be silent, that we will not stand down in the face of adversity, but we will gather together and make sure that those who are oppressed are no longer oppressed. So if you're ready for tonight's gathering, let me see you put your hands together. And let me hear you say, we are fired up, ready to go. Fired up, ready to go. I can't hear you. Fired up, ready to go. Put your hands together and welcome Jonathan Wilson-Hartgrove as he takes us in our program.
Welcome to the gathering. You can have a seat. Everybody's fired up and ready to go. There is plenty of ice cream out here, so feel free to get up and move about and get yourself some ice cream. But we're glad to be together on this July 4 weekend to focus on voting rights. Voting rights has been in the news, certainly for those of us here in North Carolina. I hope you noticed that in May and June, 4 Moral Mondays in a row, we had decisions from the Supreme Court of the United States in favor of our fight for voting rights. Let's give a hand for that. So just to be clear, racial gerrymandering is wrong. Racialized voter suppression, any voter suppression, is wrong. The court has, seems to us, been quite clear about this, but also in the news this week, you may have noticed that the Pence-Kobach, I think the technical name is Voter Integrity Commission. We're going to call it the Pence-Kobach Mission, because it's been very clear from the history of Kobach's work in Kansas that he's trying to do the same things that the court said were voter suppression here in North Carolina. We're going to talk about that more tonight. So voting rights has been in the news this week, and in the long history of this country, voting rights has been a central piece of our July the 4th celebrations. You know, July 4th celebrations have been a big deal for people who have longed to see this democracy grow into something that includes everyone. Was a big deal for the abolitionists, and some of Frederick Douglass's great speeches happened at July 4th gatherings during the 1850s. If you go to Freedom Summer 1964, you know, when there was a great surge for democracy in the South, it was July 4 picnics that were really the kickoff of much of the community-based organizing that happened there. So we have a long history of, on this holiday, having gatherings to reflect and to plan action about voting rights. So we're going to dive into that tonight. Are you with me? You want to dive into voting rights? All right. So we've got a great lineup tonight. I'm excited to have as a guest here, who I'll interview in a little bit, Councilwoman Maria Palmer from Chapel Hill. Give her a hand. Though she could not be with us tonight, her witness is very much on record, and so we have a cameo appearance from Miss Rosanelle Eaton. And finally, we have a message, a moral message from the Reverend Dr. William J. Barber. Give him a hand. Good to see you. All right.
Jonathan,
fresh off the road.
Fresh off the road.
All right.
Where's your newspaper?
Give us an update. I left it in the room.
Oh,
He's got a Bible in one hand.
He's got a Bible in one hand.
And a newspaper in the other. I was just updating him on the news before you came in.
Oh, well, you're the newspaper then.
All right.
And you're not fake news. Well, we're glad to be. You know, we've been fighting this week, been working. We got people in Boston, all over the country, who are leaders who are joining in the Poor People's Campaign. And with the UCC Synod yesterday, UCC, the National Synod, they're going to be joining with us, Jonathan, Disciples of Christ. And on Friday, was it Friday? Friday, I think, had a chance to be with the nuns, Sister Simone. They did a vigil. They did a vigil outside, and they said that things were going on, and then all of a sudden confusion kind of started happening in the Congress. You know, you get those nuns to praying.
Some things need to be confused.
Now, I do want to say to my folk, ice cream has to stop now. We're in service now. So y'all have to come sit down. Now, I am going to have a little church etiquette. Even though this is not formal church, everybody need to come on in, take a seat, stop Ben and Jerry with the ice cream. It'll be here after the fact. But now we need to pay full attention. We only ask you for an hour and a half. Amen? All right? So we need everybody to come on, grab a seat. My mother's here today. 1 minute. Where's my mother? That's my mother here today. Right there. Now, when I was growing up, you couldn't eat. Lord knows you couldn't even chew chewing gum in church. She wouldn't let you. She was a church organist. You know what I'm talking about? She didn't play that. So even though we're not in quote unquote typical church, this is a very spiritual, very moral space, amen. And we want everybody to be engaged. People are looking at us from all over the country, thousands of people. Y'all said hello to them, wave at them. Well, wave at them. Say forward together.
Forward together.
Not one step back.
Not one step back.
Now say this is the gathering. All right, all right. Is there some music in the house? Now, I know y'all ain't recruited Charmaine to sing. No, I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing. All right, teasing. All right, all right. Hey, look, see, but before y'all start, look, everybody, Freddie, everybody deserves a little light under the sun. Is that true? I mean, is that true? Absolutely. Everybody deserves a little light under the sun. Can y'all hit just a little bit of that? Just a little bit, not too much. Y'all didn't know this was a spiritual song, did you? Ain't nothing but...
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. So we thought that would get you warmed up a little bit before we all sing together, because you do know we sing together. You know that by now, right? So when you walked in the door, the sign-up sheet wasn't out there, but we got you in here, and you're a part of the choir now. So there's no turning back. You're just in, that's all. Okay, so real quick, we always take inventory. Altos, raise your hand. Good. Sopranos. Tenors. Bass baritone. If you're any of those, only in the shower. Some of y'all raise your hands again. I tell you what. Okay, so we want you to stand, and remember that our motto is always, we stand together because we stand together. Right? And we're going to do... before we create the Justice Jump Off Choir, the second edition, we're going to do a song that's traditional, but we're going to throw a little jazz in there. So I hope those of you who were around when this song was done back in the day don't mind that we put a little flavor to it. And if that's okay, if we have your permission, we're going to do Guide My Feet While I Run This Race. Now, what I want you to do is to partner up with somebody, because if this gets real good to you, you might want to cut a little, I don't know, you might want to do a little step. But I want you to look at one person, hold their hands, and ask them to walk with me
while I run this race. Better still, ask them to come go with me while I run this race, because I don't want to run this race in vain. Put your hands together. Walk with me while I run this race. Walk with me while I run this race. Walk with me while I run this race, 'cause I don't want to run this race in vain. Oh, guide my feet while I run this race. Oh, guide my feet while I run this race. Guide my feet while I run this race, 'cause I don't want to run this race in vain.
Help me to stand while I run this race. So help me to stand while I run this race. Come on and help me to stand while I run this race, 'cause I don't want to run this race in vain. Pray for me while I run this race. Oh, pray for me while I run this race. Come on and pray for me while I run this race, 'cause I don't want to run this race in vain. While I run this race, 'cause I don't want to run this race in vain. Hold my hand while I run this race. Oh, hold my hand while I run this race. race in vain. Yeah. I don't want, 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 I really don't. I come too far, I really don't. I don't, it ain't, I don't, it ain't, no, no, I don't want to run this race in vain. Okay, now you sing. So, really quickly, because we only have just a couple of minutes for this one, let us have, well, Andrew, I'm you know, yeah. Let me have Andrew, and let me have 3 people over here. Let's mix it up some. Mix up the colors, the genders. Here's 3 people, 4 people. Ooh, don't storm the stage. I'm going to request, she's timekeeping, that's all right. Roz Pellis. Can we have Roz? Give it up for Roz Pellis. Let me have 3 people, 4 people over here. Move quickly. Move quickly. 4 people. 4 people. Huh? We need a little brown youth up in here. Oh, yeah, you're fine. Rebecca, can you join us? And because I like the hat, because I love the hat. Okay? And can we have do we have enough men? Do we have enough male energy up here? It's like, okay, come on, move quickly. Right here? Okay, come on. Yes, sir. All right, here we go. All right. So this song is simple. We're simply going to say, and you'll be singing with us, all right? So this song is, let love arise and its enemies be scattered. Let love arise and its enemies be scattered. Let love arise and its enemies be scattered. Let love arise. Okay, here's choir rehearsal. Ready? All right, choir rehearsal. All right. Y'all don't hear us. Stand with us. Let love arise and its enemies be scattered. Let love arise. Let love arise and its enemies be scattered. Let love arise and its enemies be scattered. Let love arise and its enemies be scattered. Let love
Give it up for Miss Yara Allen and the Freddie Green Band. And for the Justice Jump Off Choir. Well, I wanted to start this evening with a story about July 4th, 1829. 53 years after 1776, when some propertied white men got angry enough about what was going over in England that they decided to declare their independence from some other propertied white men. 53 years later, there was a celebration of Independence Day in Boston. It began at the Faneuil Hall with bands and celebrations. The mayor gave a speech. There was a parade through the city. But at 4 o'clock that evening, a man named William Lloyd Garrison walked to the Park Street Church and ascended that august pulpit, if you've ever seen it, and began a lecture to the 1,500 folks who were gathered that, for the first time in America's public history, called out the basic moral inconsistency of a Declaration of Independence that didn't include all of the people of this country. He was met with a good bit of silence and some rather negative reviews in the press. And as radical as it seemed, even William Lloyd Garrison at the time said that emancipation had to happen, but it couldn't happen immediately. He was initially an advocate of what they called gradualism at the time. However, after that public declaration of this moral problem at the heart of this nation's history, 10 days later, Garrison got an invitation to the African Meeting House, which, as a matter of fact, was just several blocks up Beacon Hill behind the State House. The first building built for the black church in America. It still stands. If you're ever on Beacon Hill, it's up there, the African Meeting House. And he was invited to a meeting where William Lloyd Garrison, this fired up white evangelical, sat down and listened to people who had lived under slavery and to people whose skin marked them as less than a full citizen of this country. And in that fellowship of that African Meeting House, William Lloyd Garrison gave up his gradualism. Soon after, he started the Liberator newspaper, which was published every week from then until the end of 1865. After the Liberator closed up its doors, it handed on its subscription list to the Nation magazine that's still with us today. Reverend Barber is the Southern correspondent for the Nation magazine. This beginning of this moral movement that was a fusion coalition of white folks, evangelicals, Quakers, free black folks, and formerly enslaved folks, and increasingly enslaved folks who got copies of this newspaper that came down south from preachers and others that were traveling around. This movement began to build and began to identify people who could speak out to the United States about this moral contradiction. The greatest public speaker of that movement, the most famous African American probably in this nation's history, certainly of the 19th century, was Frederick Douglass. And Frederick Douglass said that until we have the right to vote, the formerly enslaved people are not free. It's a basic, fundamental commitment of this moral freedom movement, this black-led freedom movement that identified and lifted up the voices of directly impacted people. We cannot have democracy in this country until everyone has the right to vote, until every voice is heard. It's the moral movement, it's the fusion movement, and it's the movement that has pressed on and on toward an ever-expanding gathering of people that would insist that this has to be the case for democracy to be real. And certainly today in this country, that tradition is under attack. And so what we wanted to do as we gather to address voting rights and as we gather to understand some of what's going on is to begin by just lifting up some of those directly impacted voices, people who know that the voter suppression laws, that the gerrymandering, that the rollbacks on early voting and the citizenship requirements and all of the various tactics that have been used since the 15th Amendment made it constitutionally illegal to just deny someone the right to vote. There have been dozens and dozens of ways of suppressing the vote. And yet people who have experienced that, people who've seen it for what it is, have cried out. And so to begin our witnesses this evening, we have a little video from Miss Rosanelle Eaton, a great superstar of the voting rights struggle here in North Carolina. You can check it out here on the screen.
Three lead matriarchs. I'm a preacher, and I remember it was the matriarchs in the book of Exodus that helped to save the land save the people of the Hebrews. This Rosanelle Eaton, young age of 93. 94, excuse me.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. In the year of 1934, I asked my mother to take me to the county courthouse, for I wanted to prepare myself to be able to help people vote and vote myself. So she and my brother carried me on the wagon, pulled our mule to the county seat. As we approached their office, there were 3 white men seated. One of them looked at me and asked me, "What do you want, little girl?" I quickly told them the story. One of the men, looking at each other again, told me, "Stand up straight against that wall with your eyes looking directly toward me and repeat the preamble of the United States of America without missing a word." I did it with the Constitution. Now we need to commemorate, we need to motivate, and we need to educate for the good of the people. We must strive and restore the voting rights. The other night, when they announced something about some fraud, I said, why they keep lying? Because I got on the stand and stayed on the stand at the courts. They put all of this, as it has been told, but I want to tell you what I got up there in the hot seat and told, time after time, is that they were doing that to set us back.
That's right.
And we should get interested. Everybody, go home. Tell the people, be on the street. Don't just go to the store to get groceries.
Come on now.
Go there, and if you see somebody, tell them about the movement. Tell them about the people that's working for the movement. I didn't plan to march. I wore the heels out on my shoes.
Come on now.
But the Lord put me there to help. I talk to people all over the world. I talk when I go to the shopping, grocery shopping, every shopping. I go in places and tell them, what are y'all doing? And they'll say, well, we are just talking. But then, what are you talking about? And get involved in that. You got to open up your mouth and be a committee of one. I can tell you that. And I have made many of speeches. Say, we the people. 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 Say, stand up. Stand up. Fired up. Stand up. Fired up. Thank you so much.
Well, if that's not enough to get us motivated, I don't know what is. Miss Rosanelle Eaton, thank you for your witness. Let me invite up Councilwoman Maria Palmer, who has also joined us this evening. You know, this watching the video, I was just thinking, you can have a seat right here, and here's your microphone. I was just thinking about how Vincent Harding used to say that in the story of resistance, there is a river. You know, in every generation, there have been people who have resisted the fight against justice, and in some sense, they're folks who pass the baton from one generation to the next. And so it's beautiful to see her witness, and then to think about how folks like her have passed the baton on to you and to me and to all the rest of us here. So thanks for being with us tonight. And I was going to let folks know who might not that you were one of the first Moral Monday arrestees. You've been part of this moral movement from the very beginning.
Yeah.
You are also an elected official in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, who cares a lot about voting rights. And so I wanted to start by just asking you, for you personally, why are voting rights such a crucial issue, especially right now?
Well, I have lived in several countries, and I have seen what it does to people to be disenfranchised. And I know that Ms. Eaton saw it in her life here, but as an immigrant, I want to yell at people, look, you're going in the wrong direction. You don't want to become a third world country. It's not an issue of how much riches you have. It's the distribution of wealth and power that makes us, you know, a great country. And you don't want to go there. You don't want to have to build walls around every house and be afraid of your neighbors because they feel disempowered and they feel that nothing's going to change. They can't vote. They can't express their frustration, and they can't make change. And so what options do they have? Often violence, demonstrations, and I've lived through that. And I cannot understand why people would want to have folks in their midst who are denied a voice and a vote. You want your neighbors to be a part of your community, I would think. I mean, if you valued your democracy, you would want everybody to be empowered and be working for the common good. So I tell folks, you know, unless you fix this, this country is going to become something where you're going to be looking where to move to. And my great-grandfather immigrated from the United States to Peru after the Civil War because there was such devastation in this land. He went looking for a future in South America. I think it's ironic. Americans going down there. And now, you know, it's immigration, it's immigrants that have always brought new life and new ideas, and you want them to feel invested and part of your community.
Amen. Now I'm from out in the country here in North Carolina, and so you know, in some ways I'm always thinking about how, you know, folks in rural North Carolina think about this, and I'd like you to help us all to understand exactly how this voter suppression works, because, you know, I mean, I think about it from where I grew up. I mean, I think people would have said, you know, if you have the right to vote, you just go vote, right? I know where I go vote. It's, you know, down there at the county courthouse, and why can't people just do that, right? So when we're talking about voter suppression, what ways do you see people making it harder to vote here in the United States right now?
Okay, and part of the reason that I was a plaintiff, you know, with the horrible voter ID law and testified to the impact of that law is because some folks just don't know. They're well-meaning, and they'll say that to me. Why don't your folks just vote? But how many of you here asked your parents how to register or how to vote, or got some information about elections growing up? I just wondered, see, the majority. Now, if you're an immigrant, you're in the immigrant community, or your parents were disenfranchised and never had that opportunity, where are you going to learn it? Sometimes all you learn is fear. I have heard native-born Latinos whose parents have said, don't you go vote and register. They're going to ask you about your parents, where we were born. We're going to end up in trouble. Don't go, don't tell the government where you are. Yeah. So these are citizens with every right. Where do they learn to exercise their civic duty and that they actually have rights and can participate? It's in school. And as 16 and 17-year-olds, they, because of the progressive laws we had, were able to register, were able to learn in their classes at school about voting. It was very exciting. They knew that they were already registered, and when they turned 18, they were reminded at school. That's why the legislature, the Republican right-wingers, decided this is dangerous. Wrong-wingers, sorry.
Extremists, we call them.
Yes, because not all Republicans believe that, I hope, that we shouldn't tell people how to exercise their rights. This is dangerous. Because not only will they exercise their rights, guess what? They go home and they teach their parents, many of whom will become citizens or are becoming citizens. And so I think it's one of the most exciting things that happens is to see the youth leading the way. And so if you don't give them the opportunity to do this and you wait until they turn 18, they're worried about college or jobs, they're moving, their addresses are changing. Sometimes they're working already to help support the family. So registering to vote and the mechanics of it becomes a real burden.
Yeah. So a part of this bill, this monster voter bill that you and others challenged, was that it took away pre-registration of these 16 and 17-year-olds. And then I guess it would also be the part about the ID, because the student IDs no longer applied for students who had gone off to school, right? That
was embarrassing, that how obvious it was, you know, that you can use. I took my A&T students to do service learning, and we boarded the plane with our A&T IDs because those were recognized as valid government IDs by the FAA or whoever decides what you can use to board a plane, but you couldn't use it to vote in North Carolina. Yeah. It was good enough for the federal government, but not for the state government, because they're trying to make sure that those students don't vote. So that was, and I had Latinos. I was campaigning madly 4 years ago, and I will be again in November, so I thought it was wonderful to hold somebody's hand that as I ran this race, literally. Right. But I was going door to door asking for people as votes. And I had people ask me, is there a chance they might take away my driver's license? I'm the only person in my family who's a citizen and the only person with a driver's license. If I lose this license, I can't drive people to the doctor. So I can't go vote, because if they take my license away, if they don't, you know, the names sometimes don't match, people mess up. Yeah. You know, you guys need to learn Spanish, because that's what's spoken in heaven, and you need to learn.
Gloria a Dios.
Gloria a Dios. So anyway, so they, you know, you say I am Gutierrez, and they say that's not what this says. You know, that's another name, and they were scared. Yeah. They were scared to exercise the right to vote and to lose that ID that means so much.
Yeah. So the vice chair of this new voter commission that we were talking about earlier is Chris Kobach, who has been Secretary of State in Kansas. He's and I would encourage you all to read R.A. Berman's profile of him in the recent New York Times Magazine, because one of the things he lays out is that he's been very committed in his public career to two things: one, anti-immigrant legislation, and two, voter suppression. And part of what you're describing is how these two so often go together, right? This program that he used in Kansas called Crosscheck, which is about taking names from one voter roll in one state and comparing them to names in another state, gets false positives because of just the kind of thing you're saying, right? That names aren't always right. And sometimes there are a lot of people who have the name Gutierrez. Yeah. and so these are ways of really purging the rolls of people who have already registered, people who, like you're saying, have kind of gone through that sometimes awesome and fear-inspiring experience, but they're on the rolls and now they're being taken off. Could you say something also about what the the possibility of these citizenship requirements? Because I think that's another thing where when people hear them, they say, well, a citizenship requirement, you have to be a citizen to vote. Why shouldn't you prove that? Why is it that that's more complicated than it sounds?
Well, not everybody can prove when or where they became a citizen. And sometimes your certificate of citizenship says do not copy. You know, penalty, fines, going to prison and all that. You can't photocopy that. People are scared to death to lose it. How do you prove that you are not breaking the law? I mean, you know, I can prove I'm here, standing here, but I can't prove to you that I'm not a criminal. And if you are already suspected, which is what's happening now, all these laws make everybody suspicious. And so I have a friend who has been a citizen for 40-some years. In fact, her testimony was recorded and used in the case. And she was told her Social Security didn't match her certificate of citizenship and her driver's license. So she took all the paperwork together and went to the DMV and said, what do I do? And the lady's response was, well, you could get a divorce so that your name then...
And they call it family values.
Yeah, so it was funny, but it wasn't. Her license was taken from her, and that was the only thing she had to prove her citizenship. And so I don't, you know, I think if you have to treat people with dignity and respect, and as you would want to be treated yourself, and if you put everybody in a category and say, no, those people are dishonest, those people are going to want to cheat, those people, you know, we're going to scrutinize them, it doesn't make for a good community. It doesn't make for a healthy community, certainly not for a beloved community. So as Christians, I think we should say, no, we can't do that. Yeah. When I went to jail with Reverend Barber, they didn't ask him where he was born, did they? They asked me. And they asked me where I was born, and I said, well, I'm a U.S. citizen, naturalized citizen, and the Constitution and the 14th Amendment and all this, you know, and I quoted where it says that you have all the rights and privileges and you can't be discriminated against. And I was told by the person in charge of the jail in Raleigh, Capitol Police, I don't know anything about the Constitution, ma'am. And they called Linda and said, she's a troublemaker, you need to talk to her. But I had to wait. I couldn't go before the magistrate like the other people. I had to wait until ICE cleared me. And I said, look, I can show you my passport. I can give you my Social Security number. You weren't born here, ma'am. You weren't born here. You know, some of the people that signed the Declaration of Independence weren't born here either. So, you know that? So I just think you don't know how much I have worked to make this a better place for your children, for your grandchildren, how much I have fought for the values that you hold dear. You know, you shouldn't be asking me where I was born. You should be asking me how much I love this country. And so, anyway.
Amen. Well, let me just say, on behalf of everyone here, and I think on behalf of people in this state, thank you for fighting a bad law. And thank you for winning, for fighting until you won, with many others. Thank you so much.
Okay, we ready to sing together again? So what do we do? And we stand together because? There you go. Now we're going to need all voices. Don't tell me you don't know this one right here. Just the music, right?
place. Ain't nobody crying. Ain't nobody worried. Ain't no smiling faces or lying to the races. Come on and let me take you there. Come on and let me take you there.
I'll take you there.
No hatred,
I'll take you there.
Will be tolerated.
I'll take you there.
Peace and love,
I'll take you there.
Flowing through the races.
I'll take you there.
Come on,
I'll take you there.
come on and let me take you.
I'll take you there.
Come on,
I'll take you there.
come on and let me take you there.
I'll take you there.
If you're ready,
I'll take you there.
if you're ready now,
I'll take you there.
if you're ready,
I'll take you there.
come on and go with me
I'll take you there.
to where no hatred
I'll take you there.
will be tolerated.
I'll take you there.
Only peace and
I'll take
love
you there.
is flowing through the races.
I'll take you there.
Mothers,
I'll take you there.
grab your babies by the
I'll
hand.
take you there. I'll
Fathers,
take you there.
come on and lead us to a better
Take you
land.
there.
Come on,
I'll take you there.
come on. I said, come on.
I'll take
I said,
you there.
come on. Why don't you come
I'll
on?
take you there.
Let me take you
I'll
there.
take you there.
Come on, raise your voices. Let me. I said, let me.
I'll take you there.
Why don't you come on?
I'll take you there.
Let me take you
I'll
there.
take you there.
Play Freddie. Okay, so I just got the official word that at the gathering, not only do we sing together, but we dance together. So here's what I need before Reverend Barber comes up. I need this space right here filled.
Oh, he ready now.
There you go. That's all right, pack the aisles. And whatever you got, leave it on the dance floor. Whatever it is that you got, leave it on the dance floor.
oppression is in the earth, there are some things you don't let them take from you. You don't let them take your right to protest. You don't let them take your right to vote. And you don't let them take your right to dance. I don't know if y'all remember. You remember when Nelson Mandela came out of prison? He came out dancing. In the old mass meetings of the civil rights movement, even when they were getting ready to go march before dogs, they always had a dance and a sing-along. Because I come from a tradition that says the joy of the Lord is your strength. I come from a tradition where you rejoice as you're going into battle. So tell everybody that's looking, say, don't get it twisted. The reason we're dancing is because we won't let any oppressor take our dance. And we'll dance our way. Right into the streets. Right into the courts. And if necessary, right into the jail. My goodness. 1, 2, 3, 4. Amen. You are at the gathering. Some of y'all ain't never been in a spiritual place like this. Oh my goodness. Let's give it up for Nancy Petty and Pullen for allowing us to be here. Give it up for Jonathan Hartgrove. How about Yara and Cheryl, the theomusicologists? How about Fred, the street genie? How about everybody that's here from all around the world and in this place? I want today, and part of the reason we have to have joy, it traces all the way back to even when people were in slavery. They still held on to a certain amount of joy because it takes a certain amount of joy in order to carry on the journey of justice. It's one thing to be angry because that means and grief, you're grieving. Or it's another thing to become mad because when you become mad, you do things that will actually hurt the movement. And part of the way you can stay centered is to have a certain joy even as you're fighting very serious matters. I come from a tradition, Christian tradition, where Jesus on the way to the cross was singing. A lot of people forget that. When Miriam, I come from a tradition in the Hebrew scriptures where when they were facing the Red Sea and they got on the other side and they were facing wilderness, they were singing. They were singing. You go back and look at some of the films of the SNCC movement and the civil rights leaders. In the heat of battle, they would be singing and dancing and holding one another up. Because tears can overwhelm you unless sometimes you have another place of joy and energy. So today I want to talk about something very seriously. Now I want you to hold the ancient text for a moment. It's the first chapter of Genesis. It's the very first book of the Bible, in the beginning. In the beginning. And I want you just to hold that text. I'm going to come back to it. I want you to hold the text when it says, and then God said, let us make humankind in our own image, and let them have care and concern for all things. So God created humans in God's own image, In the image of God, God created them, male and female. God created them. It's been 1,468 days since the Ryan McConnell, used to be Boehner Congress, has refused to fix the Voting Rights Act. Write that down, 1,468 days. Strom Thurmond, whom Jonathan used to work for, thank God for deliverance. Strom Thurmond filibustered the 1957 Civil Rights Act for only one day. No matter how much they talk about changing tone, that's not the issue. Because you can be mean with a nice face. You can be racist without vitriolic rhetoric. The McConnell, Ryan, used to be Boehner Congress. Ever since June 25th, 2013, when 5, not 9, 5, one African American and 4 others, 5, gutted the Voting Rights Act. And Justice Ginsburg said what they were doing was like removing the umbrella in the middle of a rainstorm. This Congress, on that day, after that day, had the authority, according to the 15th Amendment, to fix the Voting Rights Act, to redesign it. And instead, we've had a legislative filibuster for 1,467 days longer than Strom Thurmond. And we call him bad. 1,467 days longer than Strom Thurmond filibustered the 1957 Voting Rights Act. That's why we had to fight the worst, not photo ID, but voter suppression bill. They didn't pass that bill in North Carolina until after the Shelby decision. Which means the Voting Rights Act was passed August 6, 1965. And in my tradition, you can say, amen, help him, Lord, teach Barber, what up? Your preachers, Spearman and Portia, and all y'all in homes, y'all help me out. Les, that's right, Les, I know I got some help in here. August 6, 1965, I was not even 2 years old. The bill was sponsored by a Republican and a Democrat, Mansfield and Dirksen. What's this? And it was put in the Congress after Bloody Sunday. And even though Lyndon Baines didn't want it, it was passed August 6, 1965, and Lyndon Baines Johnson said that day, I fear we have given away the South for the next 40 years. He said that. No Dixiecrats voted for it. One Republican or Democrat. There may have been one Republican that voted. I think maybe one in the South. I'm talking about Southern. Maybe, but wasn't many if it was. Because almost all of the Southern delegation, which was all white, voted against the Voting Rights Act. And the Voting Rights Act, as it was passed, was not even what was originally proposed. It was watered down. For instance, in North Carolina, it only covered 40 counties, which it was saying in the other 60 counties there wasn't enough racism over the years to justify coverage. So let's not think that the Voting Rights Act was everything it should have been. Only 40 counties were covered. Wilmington, where the Wilmington riots occurred, wasn't covered. Because the Wilmington riots were not official history in 1965. All those folk that were killed and all those folk that died November 10th, 1898, it was not official history. It was not acknowledged, so it was not a part of the testimony. That means, though, if the Voting Rights Act was gutted in 2013, and it's been so for 1,468 days, in this room right now, we have less voting protections right now than we had August 6, 1965. Which means that, yes, the Russians did it. But long before the Russians hacked this system, voter suppression and racist gerrymandering hacked the American democracy and voting system. And sadly, Democrat or Republican, we didn't have one debate, presidential debate, on voting rights. Not one, Democrat or Republican. Primary, general election, not 1 hour. In a democracy, not one. And if you look today, they're spending all this time talking about Russia because America still doesn't want to deal with racism. And the impact that racism has on all people. When the Voting Rights Act was passed, my mother was 32. She had been in the Civil Air Patrol. She had worked in government. She had taken me out in the middle of the night to see Nat King Cole because she said it was so important that she heard him say, "Unforgettable." Took me out in a thunderstorm, what I heard. Wrapped me up in a shawl. Left my daddy at home. A church woman. Chestnuts roasting on an open fire. Look at her, she getting happy right now. How many of y'all Nat King Cole messed you up, women? Just go on and tell. And brothers, how many of you wish you had that voice? You wish you had it. Lord help us here. Lord help us. But think about this. She was 32 years old, had worked in the Civil Air Patrol, but prior and had worked in government, had a college degree. She sits here today, 84 years old, still working at the school she integrated. But before August 6, 1965, my 32-year-old mother did not have protected voting rights. My daddy had earned 3 degrees by 1965 and was on his way to his 4th. He got a degree in physics and science from St. Augustine College. He got a degree from Christian Theological Seminary and a degree from Butler University. Was working on his doctorate in education. Had served in the United States Navy in World War II. Had been on the submarine chaser. And yet, prior to August 6, 1965, after giving first-class service, he still had second-class citizenship. 38 years old, almost 40 years old, and he didn't have protected voting rights. He died in 1988. Even after the 1965 Voting Rights Act, it would take 25 years before North Carolina would send a black person to Congress. North Carolina had a 90-year absence. 1901, George White was the last African American from Reconstruction to be forced out of the United States Congress. He's from Tarboro, Rocky Mount area. Y'all look him up, George White. He gave a speech and he said, like the phoenix, one day we will rise from the ashes. But it was 90 years before another African American would sit in the United States Congress from North Carolina. 25 years after the voting rights. It wasn't as though things just suddenly got better. A former Supreme Court Justice, Henry Fry, failed the literacy test in North Carolina. The literacy test in North Carolina has never been repealed. It is still on the books today as state law. Now wait a minute before we shame it. Democrats nor Republicans have repealed it. It's been overridden by federal law. But there's never been an official repeal of the literacy test in North Carolina. Yeah. Did you hear Rosanelle? And when she said, I did it, and we clapped, isn't that a strange irony? Isn't that, because I stepped back for a minute and said, why are we clapping? Why are we celebrating that a woman had to recite the preamble to folk who couldn't even read it themselves just because she was black and wanted to vote? Why are we celebrating? You overcame the obstacle. Hallelujah. The obstacle shouldn't have been there in the first damn place. And I know what I said. I meant to say that. Because there's some of this stuff we have to condemn. You know, I remember I went to the movie about Red Tails. And folk at the end of the movie were just clapping. Oh, they made it through. I'm like, are you crazy? Clapping at the end of this movie, celebrating that people had to get blown up just for people to treat them as human beings? They had to go through all of that. And then at the end of the movie, say, we would like to request the Red Tails because they've never lost anybody. And everybody, the people in the movie like, oh yeah, now that's what you should do. What you should do, what? Gradualism? You should be forced to have to die and give first-class blood for second-class citizenship until somebody is satisfied with your efforts? You don't receive that with birth? I should celebrate that somehow my mama at 32 got the right, yay mama, when she should have had it when she turned 18. Voter registration rates. I don't know if you do this in 1965 versus 1988. In Alabama, the black voter registration in 65 was 19.3%. For blacks and whites, it was 66.2%, which is a gap. Was a gap then in 1965 of 49%. So there were some people that made it through. And people celebrate that they made it through, but you shouldn't have to celebrate it that they made it through, because that's like celebrating somebody that makes a shot on a pool table that's tilted. I mean, it's all right to make the shot. I used to hustle pool. I can make the shot, but that ain't how you're supposed to play pool. The only time you tilt the table is when you cheating. Mississippi, 1965, only 6.7% of blacks were registered. 69.9% of whites. The gap was 63%. 63%. In North Carolina, 46.8% of blacks were registered, but 96.8% of whites were registered, and the gap was 50%. By 1988, when Jesse Jackson ran for president, 23 years later, the gap in registration was under 10%. But for all those previous years, the gaps were 49, 60, and sometimes 50%. Now, why did I start like this today? Because I've been thinking, you know, this is a moral gathering. And yes, we talk about politics, but we also talk about theopolitics or ethical politics. So the question I'm raising today is a question I heard a judge from South Carolina ask the legislators or the people representing the North Carolina state legislature when they took the monster voter suppression bill into court. Some of you all were there that day when he said, I just got one question. And he said it in a southern drawl. Anybody talks in a southern drawl? He said, I just got one question I want to ask. And I was like, oh, Lord. Oh, ye of little faith. I was like, oh, Fred, I was like, oh, Lord. Because when he started, I was like, he's from South Carolina too, and he had gray hair, but God will raise up some strange deliverers. And I mean, everybody had asked this question about this and that, the question about that, and the technicalities of the law, and he just kind of leaned into his side like he was half asleep, and then he said, all right, Mr. Chief Judge, I just got one question. Why is it that y'all don't want folk to vote? You remember that day, Spearman? And that dropped like a weight in that room, whole courtroom. You know, that really is the question. That's the question. That really is the theological, ethical, social, political question. Why is it that y'all don't want some people? He was saying that to the legislature. Why is it that some of y'all don't want other people to vote? Mr. Trump, why is it that y'all don't want other people to vote? Mr. Berger, Ryan, McConnell, why is it y'all don't want other people to vote? And I got a little insight, I think, a little insight from the Holy Ghost, since this is Pentecost. That's why I'm wearing my red shirt. The Holy Ghost kind of woke me up with that question and said to tell folk, in order to understand, to deal with that question, you must understand the fear factor. What is that people are afraid of? What is it? What is it? Well, let's see. First of all, and it's a fear that is down through history. You know, perfect love casts out fear, so that means that lack of love increases fear. The first fear is the fear of full citizenship. I want to say something. Folk ain't never really been afraid of black folk being free. Or brown folk being free. I mean, especially if you were free enough to go work in their field. The problem wasn't just being free. You know, even in slavery, they give you a pass and you could go travel. The fear was, if black people got freedom, they would want citizenship. That was the debate when Lincoln pushed the 13th Amendment. Go back and read the testimony. The question kept being asking, does this mean citizenship? If we say end slavery, does this mean citizenship? And this has been the fear at the heart, not only of racism, but of sexism and every other ism. Fear that some people will not only want to be free, but they will want full citizenship and all the rights thereunto. Lord have mercy. Full citizenship. But there's another fear, the fear factor, and that is the fear of legitimacy. This fraud commission ain't about Trump's election. Thought I'd tell y'all that. That's what they're saying. But you got to, you know, in order to understand Trump, you got to kind of go back to your old life. I'm not saying, I don't want any of y'all that have come out of a life to go totally back. But, you know, sometimes I have to go back to when, Roz, I used to hustle, pool, and do stuff because, you know, you learn little tricks, distractions. Y'all looking at me like y'all ain't never seen a preacher that used to hustle. Oh, Lord. Oh, John, you see him look at me. Reverend Barber used to hustle, poo, sure did. Would beat you, take your money, then go take my wife out, sure would. Well, she was my girlfriend then. But anyway, this is on TV, isn't it? Oh, okay. All right, well, okay. Yeah, I'm just being real. Yeah, we'll hustle you and talk junk to you. Play the game and you sit down and your boyfriend be there with you. I'd make a shot and say, why are you still going with him? He can't even make that shot. Why don't you come over here and go with me, girl? But when you do that, that was distraction. It wasn't really about his girlfriend. It was about getting in his head. This fraud commission ain't about Trump. It is not about 216. It's about Obama's election. It ain't about the last election. It's about the 2 elections prior to do that. Because birtherism didn't work. And the role of birtherism was to provide psychological cover for those who could not bring themselves to accept a black man in a White House. And it worked for a while among certain folk. And it gave psychological cover. This is not legitimate. But now the birtherism has been debunked. And so there is a need now to delegitimize. And so what he's trying to do with the commission is to bring up fraud, which is fraudulent in itself, to come out with a report that says these pastors, not just 216, were fraudulent to give people relief. One psychologist calls it white fragility, to give people relief from the fragile state when certain people see their world falling apart. I first experienced this in Martinsville, Virginia, Jonathan, when I was pastoring. And Doug Wilder ran for governor and won in Virginia. Doug Wilder went all over the state, even while they still had the N-word in the state anthem of Virginia. And he won. I had just gone to preach pastor in Martinsville, Virginia that year. He won. I think it was around almost near the time that Mandela came out. It was all that started happening in that time. And when he won, his opponent kept calling for recounts. And so, you know, I was a young preacher, just out of Duke, but didn't know much about pastoring. And I got up one day in church and said, I want y'all to pray that this election will be over and that the opponent would stop calling for recounts. And when after church, one of the old deacons who was kind of illiterate came up to me and said, Pastor, he can't. I said, well, he can't do what? He said, he can't stop calling for recounts. I said, yes, he can. He said, no, he can't. Because to stop calling for recount, he's going to have to accept that Pat Robertson and his mama lied to him. I said, what are you talking about, Deacon? He said, look, Bob, Pat Robertson's daddy was the one who came up with coined the term interposition and nullification. He was a staunch racist in Virginia, right? And Pat Robertson nursed on the breast of racism, right? Virginia was the state where they closed down schools rather than have integrated schools. Virginia was the place where a white man was arrested and they were threatening him and his wife, put in jail for marrying each other, the Loving case, right? He said that man's mama told him all his life he was better than other folks simply because of the color of his skin. Then as time went on, she says, well, you might have to compete with somebody on the basketball court or might compete with somebody on the football field. You may even have to compete with somebody at city council. But if you ever run for governor, that's an exclusive club for white males. And then Doug Wilder beat him. And for him to stop calling for recounts, he would have to say, Mama, you lied to me. or he would have to come up with a way to prove that the election was rigged. This commission is about trying to delegitimize the last 8 years. Not just about last year. It is trying to make it be clear to some people alternative facts, and that the reality is Obama didn't really win. The election was rigged. Say rigged. Rigged. And all of these, you notice all this talk about voter fraud didn't really start happening until after 2008. And that's when it began to rise. I'm off script a little bit, Laura. Then it began to rise at warp speed. But there's also the fear of demographic shifts. The 22 states, put that down, Laura. The 22 states, I'm the preacher now. You have to learn how to be a deacon now. The 22 states, there were 22 states since 2010 that have passed voter suppression laws. Now watch this. We're going to do a little math. Those states represent 250 electoral votes. They also represent 54% of the black vote in those 22 states. They also represent 44 senators and 50% of the United States Congress. So if you can control those 22 states, you enter into the race only 16 votes short of an electoral college win. We had 868 less voting sites in the poor and black and brown and poor white community in 2016 than we had in previous election. We had 158 less sites in North Carolina. Trump won Wisconsin. The polls said he was losing by an average of 6.5 points. It has now been proven by analysis that 200 to 250,000 votes, black votes in Wisconsin were suppressed, and Trump only won by 22,748 votes. The Brennan Center has noted that nearly 20 seats in the United States House of Representatives would probably not be Republican if it was not for apartheid-type redistricting that has gone on in the South and in the Rust Belt and in the Midwest. All of this is happening at the very time, if you register 30% of the unregistered voters in the former Confederate, 13 former Confederate states, and you then connect that 30% of unregistered voters with Latinos, and then you connect that 30% with progressive whites who want to move forward and not backwards, the solid South would be broken. There is a fear of this demographic shift. The nation is undergoing, one article says, one of the most important demographic transitions in history. For the first time, minority babies outnumber white newborns. Census predicts that by 2042, non-Hispanic whites will no longer be the majority. So you're either going to have to get along with people or be left out in the cold by yourself. My goodness gracious. 65% or older by 2030. More than a fifth of Americans will be 65 or older compared to 1/8 today. We're talking about seismic changes. By 2042, non-white Hispanics will cease to be the majority. Already, more than a third of Americans are minorities, and non-whites accounted for 92% of the population growth between 2000 and 2010. The pace of this change in the nation, the population has grown to about 315 million, but this pace of diversity has stunned the expert. Now, it wouldn't stun them if they knew the Bible, Because the same thing happened in Exodus. The more Pharaoh oppressed people, the more they grew. Oh, Lord have mercy. Yeah. Diversity and the rapid growth is one of the reasons this article says we ended up with a black president. It wasn't that the white base expanded. Because Obama got very little. But it was that the black, the brown, the young, the gay, and the Latino, and the Asian populations expanded. And it overcame past obstacles. Right? The 113th Congress had 28 Latinos in the House of Representatives. 28. And we're talking about building walls. The largest Latino class in U.S. history was in the 113th Congress. A third Latino joined the United States Senate. What we have is a fear of demographic shift. But we also have a fear of policy possibilities. Turn that map over there. I want to show you something. This is what we're doing for the Poor People's Campaign as we're moving around. With the states we're choosing to organize in, we're starting with voter suppression. Now watch this map. Watch what Clinton has done. If you go to voter suppression and you look at the states that have the highest level of voter suppression, you see where they are? Then you go to the states that have the highest level of poverty. Yeah. Then you go to the states that have the highest level of white poverty or child poverty. You're starting to see a pattern. Go back to the states with the highest level of voter suppression. Now go to the states with the highest level of poverty. Now child poverty. Now the lack of Medicaid expansion. Now the lack of a living wage. And now, we're doing environment, we're doing LGBT, but then now look at, what's the last one? White Protestant evangelical. Ain't it interesting that the states that claim to have the most evangelical folk are the same state that have the most voter suppression, the most denial of health care, the most denial of living wages, and the highest rates of child poverty. That is a moral sickness. That means that there's a false brand of morality that has been playing havoc with the spirit and souls of people in America, but there's a tide rising. See, the fear is that if there wasn't voter suppression and people voted, then persons that support denying health care and paying insurance companies, the people that support keeping living wages low, wouldn't be in office to do those things. And that is why my white friends, my gay friends, my labor friends, my healthcare friends, if you believe in healthcare, if you believe in living wages, if you believe in addressing poverty, you better make sure you understand voter suppression is not about black folk. It hits black folk, but it undermines all people and hurts every one of us. It's all right to stand up if you want to. This place is all right. And we've got to make that connection and stop fighting in our silo. Too often, labor has let voting rights be the black organization's issue. And the health care, that's the health care said, we're over here doing health. But no. The other folk understand. We suppress the vote, we can suppress living wages. We can suppress health care. And could it be, with all these demographic shifts, that one of the real cynical attitudes behind denying health care is you don't want people to live who might grow up and vote against you. Now I know somebody said, Rambo, that's just too radical. You're just being too radical. Well, I don't know. That's why they claim they closed. If you read some of the literature from the 1800s, the Freedmen Bureau hospitals were closed because there were certain people so cynical that they said, we cannot let these hospitals stay alive because these former slaves are getting well, they're living longer, they're becoming full citizens, and if they do, the demographics will shift and we will not be able to implement the policies. Now, here's the last thing. Underneath all of this, though, is a deep theological issue. And that is why Jonathan and many of us have decided we can't just preach in sanctuaries anymore. We've got to bring a moral critique to the public square. It's because the greatest fear, I believe, behind voter suppression is the fear of other people's humanity. It always has been, and it always is. Systemic racism is actually an irreverent theological concept. Racism is an unholy religion. It ain't just a sociological sickness. It's not just a political a malady. It is, in fact, a disease of the spirit. Racism is idolatry, self-worship, which is the greatest sin of the Bible. The greatest sin of the Bible is idolatry. The second greatest sin is the mistreatment of the poor, and the least of these, when you elevate yourself to a point that you don't have to care about other people. Self-worship. Racism is so terrible that it can even impact black people. That's why you have today some African Americans actually supporting those that are passing racist policies against them because they have begun to worship the idolater. And they believe if we get close enough, maybe the idolater won't hit us. Maybe the pain won't come our way. This is all history. I sometimes don't like to talk about it, but you do understand that before there was a civil war in the country, there was a civil war in the church. Prior to 1861, in the 1840s and 50s, almost every denomination split north and south over the issue of slavery, over the issue of whether or not people with black skin represented the imago Dei of God. Understand that there was a whole debate. You can go to Duke, it's in the stacks. They got all these books in the Duke Library, the Harvard Library, that where scholars preached and taught sermons and theological treatises on the rightness of slavery. I ain't talking about in the backwoods. I'm talking about right over there at Duke and Harvard and Princeton. There are major schools in this country. Their endowments were funded by the slave trade. Oh, Lord help. That's why people like William Lloyd Garrison, who was white, had to come out and challenge this, because he saw what it was doing. He saw that it wasn't just a political issue, it was a deep theological issue. There was a whole debate one time over whether to baptize the slave or not to baptize the slave. And here's how the debate went. The debate was, if we baptize the slave, does that mean that baptism means they're free? So they said, no, we better not baptize them. And then the reason for not baptizing them was this weird theology that black skin color was a permanent sign of the demonic. It was the mark of Cain. Now, don't, even though the mark of Cain was a mark of protection, that's a whole nother sermon for another day. And they said, well, black and brown people were made to be hewers of wood and toters of water. And you said, well, where you get that from? Noah. Oh, so when Noah was drunk, God gave him the ability to curse a whole people. That's what you really think? Yes, that's what was taught. That a drunk Noah had the ability to curse a whole people, and God honored it. Yeah. And then they said, well, no, we will baptize the slave, but they will have to take an oath. You can go pull the oath from the stacks over in Duke. And the oath is, you can be baptized for heaven, but you will in no way use this baptism to affect your life on earth. And white evangelicals like Garrison and Quakers and joined together with black abolitionists and said, oh no. When you see voter suppression in the 21st century, understand, I'm through, that we are still wrestling with what we call false ontology or heretical ontology. That is, that God intended for some folk to be different. And God has made some people who were born for mistreatment. They were born for discrimination. And when we look at the history of voter restrictions, and we look at how, for instance, what Reinhold Niebuhr said when he said the moral attitudes of dominant and privileged groups are characterized by universal self-deception and hypocrisy. That's Reinhold Niebuhr, who was white. Dr. King, pulling on that, he said the future will depend in America on the ability of white America to honestly admit that it has been unjust, that racism is deeply rooted in this country, and that the white backlash is nothing but a new name for an old phenomenon. What we see going on right now with Trumpism ain't nothing but a new name for an old phenomenon. And it's time for U.S. citizens, people of faith, to admit that we still have operating in our politics this irreverent religiosity that deep, may not always be articulated with the voice, but it comes out in the policy. That's why the Supreme Court recently had to rule against our voter suppression, because they didn't listen to what the legislature was saying. They looked at what the policies were doing. And they said, this is surgical racism. This is apartheid racism. In other words, and that meant that deep down, whether they ever say it or not, there are some people who yet believe that there are those for whom you do not have to honor their full humanity. Which means voter suppression is sin. Call it a whole lot of things. But Freddie, at the end of the day, it's sin. And you don't have to go anywhere further than the first chapter of the Bible. So go tell all those folk that's always Bible thumping, they've missed the first chapter. If they're not fighting against voter suppression, they missed the first chapter. Let me read it for you and I'm through. God spoke, let us make human beings in our image, make them reflecting our nature so they can be responsible for the fish in the sea, the birds in the air, the cattle, and yes, the earth itself and every animal that moves on the face of the earth. God created human beings. He created them like God's self, reflecting God's nature. He created them male and female. He blessed them, told them to prosper, reproduce, fill the earth, take charge, be responsible, take care of the earth, care for it, don't destroy it. Every living thing, care for it. In other words, in the Latin, that word that he made them in the image of God is imago Dei. It means that in everybody you see, male, female, gay, straight, whoever they are, no matter what their color, you are looking at the image of God. And that means that when you expand the right to vote, we are acknowledging the imago Dei of everybody. Let me push one more time and make this glaringly clear. You see, only people can be citizens. Y'all hear what I'm saying? We don't give citizenship to parakeets, puppies, and kitty cats. Your pet can't go down to the voter registration place and apply for a voter registration card. We don't consider animals. We only give citizenship to those that are born or naturalized in this country. And we only give voting rights to those who are 18, born or naturalized in this country. So when we suppress votes, we are saying you're not a citizen. And if you're not a citizen, we're further saying you're not human enough to participate fully in this democracy. That's not a left issue. That's not a right issue. That is blasphemy before the living God. That's why Isaiah 10 says it like this: woe unto you who legislate evil and who make laws that make victims, laws that make misery for the poor, that rob the destitute of my people, who exploit the widows, who take advantage of the homeless children. What will you do on the day of judgment when God comes to judge his earth? The fight for voting rights is a fight for everybody's humanity. Touch your neighbor and say, neighbor, I'm going to fight for your humanity, because I see the image of the Creator in you. Tell him, say, in you with your blonde hair, in you with your brown hair, in you with your bald head, in you with your black skin, in you with your brown skin, in you with your white skin, in you with your red skin, in you, wherever you are. I see the image of God in you, and I'm going to fight every day to acknowledge and protect and sustain that image. Nobody has a right to run roughshod over you. You were created by that which is greater than yourself. And that's why we have to fight voter suppression. Our attitude, Nancy, has to be that Langston Hughes wrote in 1935. The free? Who said the free? Not me. Surely not me. The millions on relief today, the millions shot down when we strike, the millions who have nothing for our pay, for all the dreams we have dreamed, and all the songs we have sung, and all the hopes we have held, and all the flags we have hung, the millions who have nothing for our pay except that dream that's almost dead today. But oh, let America be America again. The land that never has been yet, and yet must be. The land where every man is free. The land that's mine, the poor man's, the Indians, the Negroes, me. Who made America? Whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain. We must bring back our mighty dream again. Sure, call me any ugly name you choose. The steel of freedom does not stain. From those who live like leeches on the people's lives, we must take back our land again. America, oh yes, I say it plain. America has never been America to me, and yet I swear this oath that America will be. Out of the rack and the ruin of our gangster death, the rape and the rock graft and stealth and lies, we the people must redeem the land, the mines, the plants, the rivers, the mountains, and the endless plains, and all the stretch of these great green states. And we must make America again. So my friends, that's why we got to march on DC next year. That's why we got to move in 25 states. We can't give in to fear. We must stand up in faith. We can't give in to the fear of Trump, the fear of McConnell, the fear of Ryan, the fear of Session, or the fear of one another. That's why we had to fight in North Carolina, and we had to win. That's why we will not quit until there's automatic voter registration for everybody at 18. We must make America what God intends it to be. And America cannot be what God intends it to be until everybody is seen as God's special somebody. Red, yellow, black, or white. We're all precious in God's sight. Give up the fear and grab on to the faith.
want you to remain standing. And like our ancestors before us, if you just link up with somebody. And let's sing this together.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday.
We shall overcome.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We'll overcome someday. Oh, it's deep, deep in my heart. I do believe that we we'll overcome someday.
We shall overcome.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome
today. We shall overcome today.
We'll overcome today. Oh, it's deep in my heart. I do believe that we shall overcome. We'll overcome today.
We are not afraid.
We are not afraid.
We are not afraid.
No, no, we are not afraid.
We are not afraid.
We are not afraid. Yeah. We're not afraid today. Today we are not afraid, for it's deep. Deep in our hearts, we do believe we shall overcome. We'll overcome someday.
Can we hum that? Can we hum that, everybody?
It's good to be together. It's good to have a gathering. We're going to keep gathering, and we want to invite everyone to sign up and be part of this Poor People's Movement. We got to gather some other people. So join us next first Sunday, August 6th, right here in this space. We're coming back to this space for those of you who are here. If you can't be here, host a live stream where you are. Thanks to all who've joined us for live stream tonight. Let's sing one more verse and close out. We shall overcome.
We shall overcome. We shall
put your hands together. Welcome to the gathering.
This little life of mine, I'm gonna let it down.
A few years ago, a gathering began, a fusion coalition. The New Testament has that word in Greek that we translate church, but that word in common English is really the gathering. And the gathering of people who wouldn't have any other good reason to be together, but something brought them together. That's that ecclesia, that gathering.
Because every time people say, well, why they keep coming? The statute says, send these.
That's right.
And see, after it says, give me your tithe, your poor, your huddle masters, yearning to be free. Then it says, the wretched refuse of your teeming shores, send these.
Send them.
Not only should folk be coming, we should be saying, send them.
Right.
Send Joshua to us. And it says, send the homeless and the tempest tossed. Tempest tossed means if Jocelyn was going through the storm of gang violence where she was, send her. Don't deny her. Send her. Don't send her away. Send her to us.
Join us on August 6th for the gathering. This month we're focused on immigration and sanctuary. We have millions of neighbors who are living in the shadows without documentation, without papers, for various reasons, and yet we have a crisis in this country now, a moral crisis, because those folks are being pushed out. They're being scared into hiding and into running away, and they're being rounded up by ICE and by deportation orders. Our detention centers are filling up. It's a moral crisis, and we're calling on the faith community and the moral movement to come together to learn about what's going on, to learn how faith communities can offer sanctuary, and to stand with our immigrant brothers and sisters.
This is our daughter. Touch her. Touch us. This is our daughter. Touch her, touch us. This is our daughter. Touch her, touch us. This is our daughter. Touch her, touch us.
Well, Reverend Barber, I believe we have a gathering. We have a gathering, and that's where we're going to start.